They told her she was nothing, a broken girl with no past, no future, no name that mattered. For 5 years she believed them. Until the night she ran, collapsed into the arms of a blind king cursed by shadows, and discovered the truth they'd buried. She wasn't just someone. She was the heir they tried to erase, and the queen who stole everything was about to learn what happens when you cage a wolf and forget it still has teeth. If you want to see how a forgotten prisoner becomes an unstoppable queen, stick with me until the end. Drop a like. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, and let's dive into this storm together. The needle went in at dawn. It always did. Elara Vane didn't fight it anymore. The first year, she'd thrashed and screamed until her throat bled, until her voice gave out completely, and all that remained was a hoarse whisper that Greaves ignored anyway. The second year, she'd begged, actually got down on her knees and pleaded with him to tell her why, to explain what she'd done to deserve this, to just let her remember. By the third year, she'd learned that resistance only made Greaves angrier, and when Greaves got angry, the bruises took longer to fade and the drugs hit harder. So she sat still on the edge of the rotting cot, her wrist extended like an offering to a god she'd stopped believing in, and watched the clear liquid disappear into her vein. The drug hit fast, always fast. A cold wave that started in her fingertips and crawled up her arm like ice water in her bloodstream, drowning thought, drowning memory, drowning anything that felt remotely like her. "Good girl," Greaves muttered, capping the syringe with fingers that trembled slightly. He was getting older. She'd noticed that. His hands weren't as steady as they'd been when this first started. He was a wiry man with hollow cheeks and eyes like dirty ice. The kind of eyes that looked through you instead of at you. He smelled like sweat and old leather and something sour she'd never been able to identify. Probably cheap whiskey. He never looked at her like she was a person. Just a thing. A job. A problem that apparently paid well enough to keep him out here in the middle of absolutely nowhere, living in a cabin that was one strong wind away from collapsing entirely. Elara's head lolled to the side. The cabin swam in and out of focus, rotted beams holding up a sagging roof, a cracked window patched with yellowed oilcloth that barely kept the wind out, a table covered in vials and syringes and chains that rattled whenever Greaves walked past. She'd tried to remember what came before this place. Tried so many times her head ached from the effort, but the memories were just smoke, shapes with no edges, voices with no words, faces that dissolved the moment she tried to focus on them. "Why?" she whispered. Her tongue felt thick, useless. "Why do you keep doing this?" Greaves didn't answer. He never did. He just packed his kit, careful, methodical, like he was handling something precious, locked the door behind him with a key that hung on a chain around his neck, and left her alone in the silence. The forest outside was endless. She knew because she'd tried to run, twice. Both times he'd caught her before she made it a mile, dragging her back by her hair while she kicked and screamed and fought like a wild animal. Both times he'd doubled the dose until she couldn't feel her legs for a week, until the world became nothing but a gray fog she couldn't claw her way out of. She didn't know where she was. Didn't know what year it was, what season, what day of the week. Didn't even know her own face. There were no mirrors here, and the water bucket only showed a pale ghost with hollow eyes and matted dark hair that she sometimes didn't recognize as belonging to her. But she knew one thing. Every full moon, something inside her tried to claw its way out. The pain started 3 days before the moon turned full. It always began the same way. A prickling sensation under her skin, like her bones were trying to remember a shape they'd forgotten. Like her body knew something her mind had been forced to forget. Then came the fever, burning her up from the inside until she shook with chills despite the sweat pouring down her face. Then the rage that came from nowhere and everywhere at once, a wildfire in her chest that made her want to tear the walls down with her bare hands, to run until her feet bled, to scream until her voice shattered the sky. Greaves knew the signs. He'd been doing this long enough to recognize the pattern. He always upped the dosage during the moon cycle, kept her so sedated she could barely lift her head, much less transform into whatever it was he was trying to suppress. But even through the haze, even through the chemical blanket he threw over her mind, she felt it. The pull. The hunger. The thing inside her that didn't belong to Greaves or his needles or this God's damned cage he'd built around her life. It belonged to her. And it was getting stronger. She'd noticed it over the past few months. The drugs weren't working as well as they used to. The fog lifted faster. The memories stayed closer to the surface, teasing her with fragments that vanished the moment she reached for them. A man's laugh, a woman singing, the smell of roses and rain, a name on the tip of her tongue that she could never quite speak. Tonight, the moon was 2 days out, and Greaves had made a mistake. He'd been distracted, muttering to himself about payment delays and those bastards up north who think they can just string me along. His hands had been shaking more than usual, and when he'd given her the shot, his grip had slipped. Not much. Maybe half a dose spilled onto the floor, but it was enough. Alara lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling where water stains formed shapes that looked almost like faces, and felt the fog lift just a little. Her fingers twitched, her heartbeat steadied, and for the first time in months, a single coherent thought cut through the static like a blade through silk. I'm going to die here if I don't move. She didn't know where the thought came from. It wasn't logical. It wasn't even smart. She had no plan, no supplies, no idea where she'd go. But it was hers, and it burned hotter than anything Greaves had ever put in her veins. She waited until his footsteps faded completely, until the cabin door clicked shut and the sound of his boots crunching through dead leaves disappeared into the trees. He usually stayed gone for at least an hour, checking his traps, she assumed, or whatever else a man like him did when he wasn't playing jailer. Then she sat up. Her head spun viciously. Her stomach lurched, threatening to empty itself even though she hadn't eaten since yesterday. But she forced herself upright, gripping the edge of the cot with white-knuckled hands until the room stopped tilting quite so badly. The window. She'd looked at it 1,000 times, dreamed about it, but she'd never actually tried because the drugs had always been too strong, because fear had always been stronger than hope. Not tonight. Tonight something had shifted. Maybe it was the reduced dose. Maybe it was the moon calling to whatever lived inside her. Or maybe she'd just finally reached the point where death seemed preferable to another day in this cage. The oilcloth was old, brittle from years of weather and neglect. She'd never tried to break it before. Too afraid, too drugged, too broken. But now her hands moved without permission, peeling back the cloth, testing the frame. The wood was soft with rot, crumbling under her fingers like old bread. One good shove, and crack. The frame splintered. Cold air rushed in, sharp and clean, and so shockingly real that Alara sucked in a breath that felt like the first real air she'd had in 5 years. She didn't think. Thinking would stop her. Thinking would remind her of the last 2 times, of Greaves dragging her back, of the punishment that followed. She just climbed. Her legs shook violently. Her arms screamed in protest, muscles that had atrophied from years of forced sedation suddenly being asked to bear her full weight. But she dragged herself through the window frame, splinters tearing at her skin, and dropped into the dirt outside. For a moment she just knelt there, hands pressed into the cold earth, breathing like she'd just surfaced from drowning. Then she ran. The forest swallowed her whole. Branches clawed at her face, leaving scratches that burned. Roots tried to trip her, sending her sprawling more than once. Her bare feet split open on rocks and thorns, leaving a trail of blood she didn't have time to care about. Behind her, she heard Greaves shouting, his voice raw with fury, with something that might have been panic. But she didn't look back. Looking back would slow her down. Looking back would kill her. She ran until her lungs burned, until her vision blurred with tears and sweat and the darkness of a forest that had never seen a logger's axe, until the only thing keeping her upright was the feral, desperate need to be anywhere but here. There was a road. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. Something deep in her gut, maybe instinct, maybe the thing that tried to break free every full moon, said east, and she followed it like a compass she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. The forest seemed to go on forever. Every tree looked the same. Every shadow held a threat. More than once, she thought she heard footsteps behind her and pushed herself harder, faster, until her legs were jelly and her heart felt like it might explode. The road appeared just after midnight, a narrow dirt track cutting through the trees like a scar. And there, tied to a post outside what looked like an abandoned way station, was a horse. The animal was old, swayback, probably meant for hauling supplies rather than speed. But it was a horse, and horses meant distance. meant putting miles between her and Greaves faster than her shredded feet could manage. Alara didn't stop to think about who owned it, or whether taking it made her a thief. She untied the reins with shaking hands, hauled herself into the saddle, nearly falling off the other side in the process, and kicked the animal into motion. The horse ran like it understood, like it knew she wasn't just running from something. She was running towards something she couldn't name, something that pulled at her chest like a hook embedded in her ribs. She rode for 2 days straight. No food, no water, just movement, because stopping meant Greaves would find her, and she'd rather die out here than go back to that cabin and those needles and that endless gray fog. The landscape changed gradually. The dense forest gave way to rolling hills dotted with sheep that scattered at her approach. Then the hills gave way to rocky highlands where the wind cut like knives and the temperature dropped until she was shivering so hard her teeth chattered. She passed villages, small clusters of houses with smoke rising from chimneys, people going about their lives. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Every time she slowed, the pull inside her chest got stronger, dragging her north like a chain she couldn't see but could definitely feel. The horse was flagging. She could feel it in the animal's gait, in the way its breathing had gone ragged. She should stop, should let it rest, find water, find food for both of them. But she couldn't. The moon was rising. She could feel it even before she saw it, a pressure building in her skull, in her bones, in the marrow of her. The thing inside her was waking up, and this time there were no drugs to keep it down. By the second night, she was shaking so hard she could barely hold the reins. Her vision kept doubling, then tripling. Her skin felt like it was on fire, like something was trying to burn its way out from the inside. The moon hung fat and heavy in the sky, and every time she looked at it, the pull got stronger. She didn't see the ravine until the horse stumbled. One moment, they were moving along what she'd thought was solid ground. The next, the earth just ended. The horse screamed, high and sharp and terrified, and then they were falling. Alara hit the ground hard enough to crack bone. Pain exploded through her shoulder, her ribs, the back of her skull. The impact knocked the air from her lungs, left her gasping like a fish on dry land. The horse bolted, vanishing into the darkness with a clatter of hooves on stone. She lay there in the dirt, staring up at the sky, and watched the moon stare back. This was it then. This was how it ended, not in Greaves's cabin, but here, broken at the bottom of a ravine where no one would ever find her. Funny. She'd always thought death would be scarier. And then she heard footsteps. Not Greaves. Not the frantic, angry stomping of a man who'd lost his prize. These were measured, controlled. The footsteps of someone who didn't need to see to know exactly where he was going, who moved through the darkness like he owned it. A shadow fell over her, blocking out the moon. Alara tried to lift her head, but the pain was too much. All she saw was a silhouette, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark cloak that moved like smoke. A man. No, not just a man. An alpha. She could feel it in the air around him, the weight of his presence, the dominance that rolled off him in waves, the kind that made lesser wolves bare their throats without thinking. She'd never met an alpha before, at least not that she could remember, but she knew what he was the same way she knew the moon was full. Instinct. But his eyes were wrong. They were open, fixed on her or near her, but they didn't see. Milky white, like cataracts had stolen the color. Blind. Who are you? His voice was low, rough, like gravel scraped over iron. Not unkind exactly, but not soft either. Alara tried to answer, but her mouth wouldn't work. Her tongue felt swollen. The world was spinning, and the moon was pulling, and the thing inside her was clawing at her ribs with increasing desperation. Can you speak? The man knelt, and she felt his hand on her shoulder, careful, assessing, checking for injuries. Her voice came out as a whisper. You're hurt. It wasn't a question. Broken ribs, maybe worse. You need a healer. No. The word surprised her. No healers. She didn't know why she said it, didn't know where the fear came from, but the thought of being drugged again, of someone putting her to sleep and taking away what little control she'd clawed back. Easy. His hand moved to her wrist, fingers finding her pulse. I'm not going to hurt you. They all say that, Alara whispered. And then the darkness took her. The last thing she felt was the stranger's hands, strong, steady, catching her before she hit the ground again. "Got you," he said quietly, and his voice followed her down into unconsciousness like a promise. When Alara woke, she wasn't in the forest anymore. She was in a bed, a real bed. Not a cot, not a pile of rags, but an actual bed with clean sheets that smelled like lavender and cedar. Soft, warm, the kind of bed she didn't remember ever sleeping in, but that felt somehow right. She bolted upright, gasping, and immediately regretted it. Her ribs screamed in protest. Her shoulder throbbed. Her head felt like someone had taken a hammer to it and then put the pieces back together wrong. "Easy." The voice came from the corner of the room, and it took her a moment to place it. The same voice from the ravine. "You're safe." Alara's eyes snapped toward the sound. The man from the forest sat in a chair by the window, backlit by pale morning light that turned his dark hair silver at the edges. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s. Dark hair that needed cutting, sharp jaw, the kind of face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so hard, so carefully controlled. He still wasn't looking at her. Not really. His gaze was fixed somewhere past her shoulder, those milky white eyes unseeing. "Where am I?" Her voice came out cracked, raw. "My home." "And where's that?" "The Draven Estate, North March territory." The name meant nothing to her, but the weight in his voice said it should. Alara looked down at herself. Someone had changed her clothes. The filthy, torn rags she'd been wearing were gone, replaced with a clean linen nightgown that was probably worth more than anything she'd owned in 5 years. Her wounds had been bandaged, carefully, professionally. "You're the one who—" She trailed off, her hand moving to her ribs. They still hurt, but the pain was manageable. Whoever had tended to her knew what they were doing. "I found you," he said simply. "You were dying." "You should have left me." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, almost amused. "Probably." Silence settled between them, thick and uncomfortable. Alara studied him, trying to piece together what kind of man pulls a stranger out of a ravine in the middle of the night and brings her home instead of leaving her for the wolves. A good man, or one with ulterior motives? "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated, just a beat, like he was deciding whether to tell her the truth or a lie. Then, "Kaelin Draven." The name hit her like a slap. Kaelin Draven, the Blind King, the alpha who'd ruled the northern territories for 5 years without ever seeing his enemies' faces. The man people whispered about in the same breath as monsters and myths. She'd heard the stories. Even through the drug haze, even locked in that cabin, she'd heard Greaves and his occasional associates talk when they thought she couldn't hear. About the king who lost his sight the same night his father died under mysterious circumstances. About the curse that no healer, no witch, no priest could break. About the ruthless, cold-blooded ruler who led his armies by instinct alone and never lost a single battle. They said he could smell lies. Said he could hear a heartbeat from across a room and know if someone meant him harm. Said he was more dangerous blind than most men were with perfect vision, and she'd just collapsed into his arms like a half-dead animal. "You should have left me," she said again, quieter this time. This time he did smile, sharp, dangerous, like a blade catching light. "Maybe," Kaelin said, "but I didn't." The estate was enormous. Alara discovered this over the next few days as she recovered enough to leave the room. Stone walls that seemed to stretch forever, iron gates, guards at every corner, every door, every window. Felt more like a fortress than a home, and everyone who lived here moved with military precision. People stared at her, whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. She didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. The servants, the guards, the nobles who passed through, they all looked at her like she was a stray dog Kaelin had dragged in from the cold. Maybe she was. She didn't know who she was supposed to be, didn't know how to act in a place like this. So she kept to herself, stayed in her room mostly, and tried not to think about the fact that Greaves was still out there somewhere, looking for her. Kaelin came to see her every day. He never stayed long, usually just long enough to ask how she was healing, whether she needed anything. He never pushed for information about where she'd come from or why she'd been dying in a ravine. Never asked about the scars on her arms, the track marks from 5 years of needles. She appreciated that more than she could say. On the fourth day, he brought food. "You're not eating enough," he said, setting a tray on the table by the window. "The healers are concerned." "I'm fine." "You're not." He sat in his usual chair, and for a moment they just existed in silence. "You weighed nothing when I carried you here, still weigh nothing." "Dürse, Bon." Alara looked at the food, bread, cheese, fruit, things that seemed almost obscenely abundant after years of watery gruel. Her stomach growled, but she didn't reach for it. "Why are you doing this?" she asked instead. "Doing what?" "This. Helping me. You don't know me." Kalen tilted his head, and even though he couldn't see her, she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "No," he agreed. "I don't. But I know what it looks like when someone's running from something worse than death." Her throat tightened. "And you just help every stray that crosses your path?" "No." He leaned back, and something in his expression shifted, softened, maybe, or just got tired. "But when I found you, when I touched you," he paused, "something changed." "Changed how?" "I could see you." Alara blinked. "What?" "For 5 years, I've seen nothing but darkness," Kalen said quietly. "No shapes, no light, nothing. But when I knelt next to you in that ravine, when my hands found you," he gestured vaguely at his face, "there was light. Just for a moment. Just enough to see your face." Her heart was pounding. "That's impossible." "So is a blind king who wins every battle. So is a woman who survives 2 days in the highlands with broken ribs and no supplies." He smiled again, that sharp, dangerous smile. "Impossible seems to be our specialty." Before Alara could respond, before she could even process what he'd just said, the door burst open. A woman stood in the doorway, tall, elegant, dressed in deep purple silk that probably cost more than a village could earn in a year. Her hair was dark, perfectly styled, and her face was beautiful in a cold, carved way. But her eyes were filled with barely concealed fury. "Kaylin," her voice was smooth, controlled. "We need to talk." "Seraphine." Kaylin didn't stand, didn't even turn toward her. "I'm busy." "So I see." The woman's gaze slid to Alara, and something predatory flickered across her face. "Who is she?" "A guest." "She looks like a vagrant." "Then I'll buy her better clothes." Seraphine's smile tightened into something sharp. "The council is asking questions. They want to know why you've brought an outsider into the estate, why you're wasting resources on someone with no name, no family, no—" "Tell the council," Kalen said, his voice dropping to something dangerous, "that I don't answer to them, and neither do you, stepmother." The word was a slap. Seraphine's eyes flashed, but she recovered quickly. "Of course, forgive me." She looked at Alara again, and this time there was no mistaking the calculation in her gaze. "What's your name, girl?" Alara's mouth went dry. She tried to remember, tried to pull anything from the fog, but there was nothing. Just smoke and shadows and the faint echo of something she couldn't quite grasp. "I don't know," she whispered. Seraphine's smile widened. "How unfortunate." She turned back to Kalen. "We'll speak later." And then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her with a finality that felt like a threat. Kalen sighed. "That's Queen Seraphine Draven, my stepmother. She ruled as regent after my father died, until I was old enough to take the throne. She hates me. She hates most people." He stood, moving toward the door with the kind of precision that came from years of navigating blind. "But you're right. She especially hates you." "Why?" Kalen paused in the doorway, his hand on the frame. For a moment he looked like he might say something. Then he just shook his head. "Get some rest," he said, "and eat something, please." Then he was gone too. And Alara was alone with the food and the growing certainty that she'd just walked into something far more dangerous than Greaves's cabin. Ishbatats. The first attempt on her life came that night. Alara was half asleep, drifting in that space between waking and dreaming when she heard it. The soft scrape of wood on wood, the window sliding open. Her eyes snapped open just in time to see the blade coming down. She rolled, pure instinct. The knife buried itself in the mattress where her throat had been a second ago, the blade sinking deep enough to hit the wooden frame beneath. The assassin was fast, masked, dressed in black, moving with professional efficiency. But Alara was faster. She didn't know how, didn't know where the instinct came from, didn't know why her body moved like it remembered something her mind had forgotten. But she grabbed the assassin's wrist as he yanked the knife free, twisted with strength she didn't know she had, and drove her knee into his gut. He grunted, stumbled, but recovered faster than she expected. He came at her again, this time with a dagger aimed at her ribs. Alara caught his arm, slammed it against the wall hard enough to hear something crack. The assassin screamed, muffled behind the mask, and dropped the blade. She didn't wait to see if there were more. She just ran. Out the door, down the hall, voices shouted behind her, guards maybe, or more killers. She didn't know and didn't care. She just ran, the same way she'd run from Greaves, the same way she'd run from everything, because running was the only thing she knew how to do anymore. She made it to the courtyard before the pain hit. Not from the fight, from inside. The moon. It was full tonight. She'd been so focused on surviving, on healing, on trying to figure out where she fit in this impossible situation that she hadn't noticed, hadn't paid attention to the calendar, to the pull that had been building in her chest all day. Now it hit her like a freight train. Her bones ached, her skin burned, and somewhere deep in her chest, the wolf she'd spent 5 years drowning in drugs finally broke free. She stumbled, fell to her knees in the middle of the courtyard, and screamed. Kalen heard the scream from across the estate. He was halfway to the courtyard before his guards even moved. He didn't need sight to know where she was. He could feel her, the same way he'd felt her in the ravine, a pull, a connection, something that burned brighter than anything he'd felt in 5 years of darkness. When he reached the courtyard, the guards were already surrounding her, weapons drawn, shouting orders at each other, at her, confusion and fear thick in the air. "Stand down!" Kalen barked. "My lord, I said stand down!" They obeyed. Barely. But they kept their weapons ready, kept their distance, because even they could feel it. The power rolling off her in waves, the wrongness, the otherness. Kalen stepped forward slowly, carefully. He couldn't see her, but he didn't need to. He could feel the shift in the air, the heat, the wildness. Could hear her breathing, ragged, desperate, barely human. "Alara?" She didn't answer, just growled, low, feral, a sound that came from somewhere primal. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly, keeping his voice level. Calm. "But you need to breathe. I can't." Her voice broke, fractured between human and something else. "I can't stop it." "Then don't." Silence, just for a heartbeat. "What?" "Don't stop it," Kalen repeated. He knelt, close enough to hear her ragged breathing, to feel the heat coming off her skin. "Whatever's inside you, let it out. Fighting it will only make it worse." "I don't know what I am." "Yes, you do." And somehow, impossibly, she did. The transformation hit like lightning. One moment, Alara Vane was a broken girl on her knees in a courtyard, surrounded by guards who wanted to kill her. The next, she was something else entirely. Bones cracked and reformed, skin split and healed. Muscle and sinew shifted, reorganized, became something more than human. And where a woman had been, a wolf now stood. Not just any wolf, a white wolf, massive, easily the size of a horse. Radiant, like moonlight had taken physical form. Eyes like molten silver that burned with an intelligence that was definitely not animal. The guards staggered back. Someone dropped their weapon. Someone else whispered what might have been a prayer. And Kalen Draven, the blind king, smiled, because for the first time in 5 years, he could see. Not clearly, not perfectly. The world was still mostly darkness, still mostly shadow, but through the haze of white and black, through the curse that had stolen his vision, he saw her. The wolf, the woman, the impossible truth standing in front of him. The curse had cracked, and he finally understood why. Alara woke up human again, naked, shivering, covered in dirt and blood that wasn't hers, probably from the assassin, her mind supplied helpfully. Kaylin's cloak was draped over her shoulders, heavy and warm and smelling like cedar smoke. He stood a few feet away, his back turned, giving her privacy while guards formed a loose circle around them, keeping everyone else at bay. What? She couldn't finish the sentence. Her throat was raw, like she'd been screaming for hours. "You're a white wolf," Kaylin said simply, like he was commenting on the weather. "Royal bloodline, thought to be extinct for 20 years. That's impossible. So is a blind king who can suddenly see when you're nearby." He turned, and his eyes, still clouded, still wrong, but maybe a little less so, locked onto hers with unsettling accuracy. "Tell me, Alara, who are you really?" She opened her mouth to say she didn't know, but then the memories hit, all at once. 5 years of fog burning away in a single brutal instant, like a dam breaking, like a wall collapsing, like every drug Greaves had ever put in her veins suddenly losing its power all at once. A castle. Marble floors and tapestries and windows that let in light like honey. A throne room where she'd played as a child. A man with kind eyes and a crown. Her father. King Aldrich Vane. Laughing as he picked her up, spun her around, called her his little wolf. A woman with dark hair and a sweet smile, teaching her to read. Her mother. Dead when Alara was 7. Fever, they'd said. Growing up in a castle, learning to fight, to hunt, to lead. Being groomed for a throne she'd inherit someday. And then, a coup. Guards bursting into her room. Her father's scream cut short, running through secret passages with her nursemaid, a woman named Mira who'd practically raised her. A woman with a poisoned smile waiting at the end of the passage. Seraphine. Not a nursemaid. A spy. A traitor. The needle going in, the fog descending, being handed over to Greaves like a package. 5 years. Gone. Stolen. Alara's breath caught in her throat. "I remember," she whispered. Kaylin stepped closer. "What do you remember?" "Everything." Her voice shook. Tears burned in her eyes, the first real tears she'd cried in 5 years, because before now she hadn't even remembered what she'd lost. My name, my family, my home, what she did. "Who?" Alara looked up at him, and for the first time since she'd woken up in that cabin with no past and no future, she knew exactly who she was. "I'm Alara Vane," she said, and saying the name felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she'd thought was dead. Daughter of King Aldrich Vane, heir to the southern throne. She swallowed hard, her eyes moving past Kaylin to the castle looming behind him. "And your stepmother murdered my father. She's the one who erased my memories. She's the one who gave me to Greaves." Kaylin's expression went very still, very cold. "Are you certain?" "I saw her face right before the drugs took everything away." She smiled at me. Alara pulled the cloak tighter around herself. "She told me I'd never remember, that I'd die in that cabin and no one would ever know what happened to the last Vane heir. But you did remember." The transformation broke through whatever she used to suppress my memories. Alara looked down at her hands, still shaking, still covered in dirt and blood. "She wanted me gone, wanted my kingdom, and she got it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The courtyard was silent except for the wind and the nervous shuffling of guards who just watched their king's mystery guest turn into a legendary creature that wasn't supposed to exist. Then Kaylin held out his hand. "Come with me," he said. "Where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can talk without an audience." He smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Alara had ever seen. "And somewhere we can plan what to do about my stepmother." Alara took his hand. It felt like the beginning of something, or maybe the end. Either way, she wasn't running anymore. The safe place Kaylin brought her to was a library. not the grand public one where nobles gathered to pretend they read. This was smaller, hidden behind a bookshelf that swung open when he pressed a specific spine. The room beyond smelled like old paper and dust, and the walls were lined with books that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. "My father's study," Kaelin said, closing the hidden door behind them. "Seraphine doesn't know about it. Or if she does, she's never bothered to look." Alara pulled his cloak tighter around herself, suddenly aware that she was still naked underneath. "I need clothes. There's a trunk in the corner. My mother's things. They should fit." He moved to a cabinet without hesitation, his fingers finding a bottle and 2 glasses like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Get dressed, then we talk." She found the trunk exactly where he said it would be. Inside were dresses, simple, practical, nothing like the elaborate silks she'd seen Seraphine wearing. She pulled on a dark blue wool dress that was only slightly too long and laced up boots that fit perfectly. When she turned back, Kaelin had poured 2 glasses of something amber. He held one out without looking at her, but his aim was perfect. "How do you do that?" she asked, taking the glass. "Do what?" "Know exactly where things are, where I am." "Practice." He took a sip. 5 years of it. You learn to compensate. Sound, smell, the way air moves when someone's nearby. He tilted his head. "With you, it's easier. I can almost see your outline, like light through fog." Alara drank. The liquid burned going down, whiskey maybe, or something stronger. "The curse, tell me about it." "What's to tell? My father died. I went blind. Same night." Kaelin moved to a chair, sat with the casual grace of someone who'd memorized every inch of the room. Healers said it was a curse. Witches said the same. Priests mumbled about divine punishment. Nobody could fix it. "And you just accepted it?" "What choice did I have?" His voice was flat. "The kingdom needed a leader. My father was dead. Seraphine was regent, but she couldn't command the armies. So I learned to fight blind, learned to rule blind, learned to survive." "She did it." Alara sat across from him. "Seraphine, she cursed you." Kaelin's hand tightened on his glass. "Explain." "The same night your father died was the same night mine did. The same night I was taken." The memories were still settling, still finding their places in her mind like puzzle pieces. That can't be coincidence. She killed them both, took both thrones. "She doesn't have your throne. The Southern Kingdom's been in chaos since your father died. No heir, no clear succession. The council's been fighting over it for 5 years. Because she made sure I disappeared." Alara leaned forward. "Think about it. Your father dies mysteriously. You go blind, my father dies, I vanish. 2 kingdoms destabilized on the same night. Who benefits?" Kaelin was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Seraphine was married to my father for 3 years. Came from nowhere. Minor nobility from some border province, or so she said. My father was besotted." He took another drink. "I never trusted her, but he wouldn't hear it. She played him, probably played my father too." Alara's stomach churned. "I remember now, there was a treaty being negotiated, an alliance between North and South. Our fathers were going to unite the kingdoms through marriage." "Whose marriage?" "Mine." The word tasted bitter. "I was 17. They were looking for a suitable match. Someone from your family, probably." Kaelin's expression shifted. "I was 22 that year. Unmarried. It would have been me." The air between them felt suddenly heavier. "She couldn't let that happen," Alara said quietly. "A unified kingdom under a legitimate bloodline? She'd have no power. So she killed them both, cursed you to make you vulnerable, and erased me completely. And now you're back." Kaelin set his glass down, and the moment you transformed, my sight started returning. "The curse is tied to me somehow. Or to what you are. White wolves were the original royal line, the first alphas. If she used their blood to curse me, then my blood might break it," Alara finished. She looked down at her hands. "But she can't know I remember. If she finds out, she already knows something's wrong. That assassin wasn't random." Kaelin stood, paced to the window. Even blind, he moved with absolute confidence. She'll try again, and next time she'll send more than one. So what do we do? We play her game. He turned, and even with those clouded eyes, his gaze was sharp. You're a guest. A nobody I found in the woods. You remember nothing. You're weak, helpless, grateful for my charity, while we figure out how to prove what she did. Exactly. Alara stood too, crossed to where he was standing. And if we can't prove it? Kalen smiled, and it was the kind of smile that probably made his enemies think twice. Then we don't prove it. We just end her. Going back to her room felt like walking into a trap. The hallways were too quiet. The servants who passed kept their eyes down, their faces carefully blank. Alara felt exposed, like everyone could see the truth written across her skin. 2 guards stood outside her door. New ones. She didn't recognize them. Lord Draven's orders, one said when she hesitated. For your protection. Protection, right. More like surveillance. Inside, someone had cleaned up the mess from the fight. New sheets on the bed, the window locked tight, and sitting on the table was a tray of food that definitely hadn't been there before. Alara stared at it, her stomach twisting. Poisoned? Probably not. Too obvious. But drugged? Maybe. She left it untouched. Sleep didn't come easily. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like a threat. She kept expecting another assassin to drop through the window, or for the guards to burst in and drag her to Seraphine. When she finally dozed off, the dreams came. Memories, mostly. Her father teaching her to ride. Her mother's funeral. Running through the castle with other children, playing games she couldn't quite remember. And then the darker ones, Mira's betrayal, Greaves's needles, 5 years of fog and pain. She woke before dawn, sweating, her heart racing. Someone was knocking. Lady Alara? A woman's voice, soft and nervous. The Queen requests your presence for breakfast. Alara's blood went cold. Tell her I'll be there shortly. She dressed carefully, braided her hair to hide how badly her hands were shaking. This was it, the first real test. If Seraphine suspected anything, don't think about it. Just survive. The breakfast room was smaller than she'd expected. Intimate. Just one long table set with fine china and silver. Seraphine sat at the head, dressed in emerald green, her hair perfect, her smile sharp. Alara, how lovely of you to join me. She gestured to the chair across from her. Please, sit. Alara sat, keeping her face neutral. I wanted to apologize, Seraphine continued, pouring tea with practiced elegance. For my rudeness yesterday. It's just so unusual, you understand. Kalen bringing home a stranger. He's normally so careful. I'm grateful for his kindness. Of course you are. Seraphine's eyes glittered. Though I must admit, I'm curious, where did you come from? I don't remember. Nothing at all? Just fragments, nothing useful. Alara took a sip of tea. It tasted normal, but she barely swallowed. I woke up in the woods. I don't know how I got there. How terrible. Seraphine's sympathy sounded genuine. Almost. And you have no family? No one searching for you? Not that I know of. Seraphine cut into her eggs with precise movements. You know, there was a girl. Years ago. A princess, actually. She disappeared the same night her father died. Vanished without a trace. She looked up, her gaze locked on Alara's. You remind me of her. Something about your eyes. Alara's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Seraphine could hear it. I'm sorry. I don't remember being a princess. No, I suppose you wouldn't. Seraphine smiled. Memory is such a fragile thing, so easy to lose, so difficult to recover. The threat was clear. They ate in silence for a moment. Then Seraphine set down her fork. I'm hosting a gathering tonight, a small dinner party. The council members, some local nobles, you should attend. I insist. The steel in Seraphine's voice was unmistakable. You're a guest in this house. It would be rude not to introduce you properly. And besides, her smile widened. I'm sure they'd all love to meet the mysterious woman who's captured my stepson's attention. Alara couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. Of course, thank you. Wonderful. Seraphine stood, and the breakfast was apparently over. I'll have a dress sent to your room, something appropriate. We wouldn't want you to feel out of place. As Alara left, she felt Seraphine's eyes on her back like daggers. The dress arrived an hour later. It was beautiful, deep red silk with intricate black embroidery, probably worth more than most people earned in a year. It was also impossible to move in, with a corset that restricted her breathing and sleeves that would make fighting difficult. Seraphine was sending a message. You're trapped. You're mine. You're going to play the role I give you. Alara stared at it for a long time. Then she put it on. If Seraphine wanted a performance, she'd get one. The gathering started at sunset. Alara descended the main staircase, slowly, carefully, because the dress made running impossible, and found the great hall transformed. Candles everywhere. Musicians in the corner, nobles in their finest, drinking wine and laughing like the world wasn't built on blood and lies. Kalen stood near the far wall, surrounded by men in military uniforms. He sensed her before she was halfway across the room, his head turning in her direction with uncanny accuracy. Their eyes met, and even through the curse, she saw recognition. Warning. Seraphine appeared at her elbow like a ghost. There you are. Come. Let me introduce you. The next hour was torture. Seraphine paraded her around like a prize, introducing her to council members and nobles whose names Alara immediately forgot. They all stared at her with varying degrees of curiosity, suspicion, and in some cases, pity. This is Lord Garrett, Seraphine said, presenting a heavy-set man with cold eyes. He oversees the southern trade routes. A pleasure, Garrett said, but his tone said otherwise. Tell me, girl, where did you say you were from? I didn't. Ah, how, convenient. Seraphine's hand tightened on Alara's arm. A warning. They moved through the crowd, more introductions, more questions she couldn't answer, and through it all, Alara felt like a mouse being shown to a room full of cats. Then Seraphine brought her to a woman in silver, tall, angular, with sharp features and sharper eyes. Lady Mira, Seraphine said, my dear friend and advisor. Mira, this is Alara. Ma sweet. The world stopped. Mira, the woman who'd raised her, the woman she'd trusted, the woman who'd betrayed her. Mira's expression didn't change, not even a flicker of recognition. Charmed, she said smoothly. Seraphine tells me you've had quite the ordeal. Alara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because Mira was looking at her like she was a stranger, and either she was the best actress in the kingdom, or Seraphine had done something to her too. She doesn't remember much, Seraphine said, her voice dripping false concern. Isn't that right, Alara? No, Alara managed. I don't remember anything. Mira's eyes were empty. Dead. How unfortunate, she murmured, and then Seraphine was moving her along to the next introduction, the next performance, the next layer of this carefully constructed nightmare. Dinner was worse. Alara was seated between Lord Garrett and a young noble who spent the entire meal staring at her chest. Kalen was at the other end of the table, too far to help, surrounded by council members who were clearly more interested in politics than food. Seraphine presided over it all from the head of the table, orchestrating conversations like a conductor, ensuring Alara was constantly the center of uncomfortable attention. So, Garrett said, cutting into his venison, you have no family, no home, no memory. What exactly do you plan to do? I haven't decided. Perhaps you should consider moving on. The estate isn't a charity house. Lord Garrett, Seraphine interjected smoothly, Alara is our guest. She's welcome as long as she needs shelter. The words were kind. The look in her eyes was not. Of course, Your Majesty. Garrett smiled. I simply worry about appearances. A young woman, alone with the king. People talk. Let them talk. Kalen's voice cut across the table. I'm not interested in gossip. Even so, the matter is settled. Kalen's tone left no room for argument. Garrett subsided, but his eyes promised this wasn't over. The meal dragged on. Wine flowed. Conversations turned to politics, trade agreements, military movements along the eastern border. Alara tried to listen, to pick up useful information, but her attention kept drifting to Mira. The woman sat 3 seats down, eating delicately, smiling at appropriate moments. But her eyes were vacant, like someone had reached into her skull and removed everything that made her human. What had Seraphine done to her? And if she could do that to Mira, what was stopping her from doing it to everyone? After dinner came dancing. Alara tried to fade into the background, but Seraphine wouldn't allow it. She was pushed into the crowd, passed from partner to partner, forced to smile and pretend she belonged. And then Kaelin was there. "May I?" he asked, offering his hand. She took it, relief flooding through her. He led her onto the floor with absolute confidence, his hand settling on her waist, pulling her into the rhythm of the music. "You're doing well," he murmured, quiet enough that only she could hear. "I'm dying." "Same thing." His mouth quirked. "But you're selling it. That's what matters." "Did you see Mira?" "The woman in silver, yes. She raised me. She was my nursemaid, and now she doesn't even recognize me." Kaelin's expression darkened. "Seraphine's work?" "Has to be. Nobody forgets a child they raised. Not like that. We'll figure it out." "How? She's playing with all of us like puppets, and we can't even—" "Alara." His hand tightened on her waist. "Breathe. If you panic now, she wins." She focused on the pressure of his hand, the steadiness in his voice. He was right. Falling apart here, surrounded by enemies, would accomplish nothing. So she breathed and danced and let him guide her through the steps like he could see every move coming. "You're a good dancer," she said finally. "For a blind man." "I cheated." "How?" "I can see you right now, barely, but enough." His clouded eyes met hers. "You're the only thing I can see." The music ended. Applause rippled through the hall. Kaelin released her, stepped back, and the brief moment of safety vanished. Seraphine was watching them from across the room, her expression unreadable. And Alara knew, with absolute certainty, that tonight had been a test. One she wasn't sure she'd passed. The attack came at midnight. Alara was back in her room, struggling to unlace the suffocating dress, when she heard it. Footsteps. Multiple. Moving with purpose. She grabbed the knife she'd stolen from dinner, slipped into her sleeve during dessert, and pressed herself against the wall beside the door. The lock clicked. The door opened. 4 men entered. Not dressed in black this time. These wore guard uniforms. "There she is," one said. "Seraphine wants her alive," another replied. "But if she fights, we're authorized to use force." Alara didn't wait for them to finish talking. She drove the knife into the nearest man's shoulder, yanked it free, and ran. They were faster than the assassin. Trained. They caught her before she reached the hallway, dragged her back, slammed her against the wall hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. "Stupid girl," one hissed. "You should have stayed quiet." She tried to fight, kicked, bit, scratched. But there were 4 of them and one of her, and the dress made every movement impossible. They were dragging her toward the door when the window exploded inward. Glass shattered. Cold air rushed in, and a massive white wolf landed in the middle of the room, teeth bared, silver eyes blazing. The guards froze. "What the—" The wolf lunged, blood sprayed, men screamed. Alara scrambled backward as chaos erupted. The wolf moving with impossible speed, tearing through guards like they were made of paper. It was over in seconds. 4 bodies on the floor. The wolf standing in the center, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Alara stared. The wolf stared back, and then began to shift. Bones cracked, fur receded, and where the wolf had been, a woman now stood. Not Alara, someone else, tall, muscular, covered in scars, with silver eyes that matched the wolf's. "Who?" Alara started. "No time." The woman grabbed a cloak from the floor, threw it around herself. "They'll send more. We need to move." "I don't even know who you are." "My name is Vera." The woman crossed to the window, looked out, cursed. "And I'm here to get you out of this death trap before Seraphine decides subtle isn't working." "Kaelin is already moving. This was planned." Vera turned, and her expression was fierce. "Your mate sent word 3 days ago. Said he'd found the lost vein heir. Said you needed extraction." What?" Vera's eyes widened slightly. You don't know. Of course you don't know. She grabbed Alara's arm. Explanations later. Running now. Can you shift? I don't know how. Then hold on. Vera shifted again, faster this time, like she'd done it 1,000 times. The wolf lowered herself, and Alara understood. She climbed onto Vera's back, gripping fur with shaking hands. And then they were jumping, out the window, into the night, into the forest beyond the estate walls. Behind them, bells started ringing, shouts echoed, torches flared to life. But they were already gone, swallowed by darkness, running toward something Alara didn't understand and couldn't control. Running toward a future where she was apparently mated to a blind king, hunted by a queen who'd already killed her father, and connected to wolves she didn't remember knowing. The forest blurred past. Vera ran like she knew every tree, every path. And somewhere in the distance, Alara heard howls. Not pursuit. An answer. Vera howled back and the sound vibrated through Alara's entire body. They ran for what felt like hours. Until the estate was far behind. Until the forest changed from managed parkland to wild, untamed wilderness. Until Vera finally slowed, stopped, and shifted back to human. We're clear, she panted. For now. Alara slid off her back, legs shaking. Where are we going? Sanctuary. Vera pulled the cloak tighter. There are others like us. White wolves. We've been hiding for 20 years. Waiting. Waiting for what? Vera looked at her, and in those silver eyes, Alara saw something that looked like hope. For you, she said simply. The true heir. The one who can break the curse and take back what was stolen. Before Alara could respond, before she could process any of this, she heard it. Footsteps. Vera's head snapped up, a growl building in her throat, and Kaelin walked out of the shadows, guided by nothing but instinct and that impossible connection. You made it, he said. Barely. Vera's growl faded. Your stepmother's playing for keeps now. I know. Kaelin's clouded eyes found Alara. Are you hurt? No, Alara stopped. Because she wasn't fine. She wasn't anything close to fine. What the hell is happening? Revolution, Kaelin said simply. Seraphines had 20 years to build her power. We're about to tear it all down. We, he smiled, that dangerous, sharp smile that made her believe just for a moment that they might actually survive this. You, me, every wolf who's been waiting for the royal line to return. He held out his hand. Are you ready? Alara looked at his hand, at Vera standing guard, at the forest stretching endlessly in every direction. She thought about her father, about 5 years stolen, about Mira's empty eyes and Seraphine's poisoned smile. She took his hand. Let's burn it all down. The sanctuary was a cave system buried deep in the mountains, 3 days' hard travel from Kaelin's estate. Alara barely remembered the journey, just endless wilderness, sleeping in shifts, and Vera's constant vigilance scanning for pursuit that never came. Or maybe it had come, and Vera had dealt with it before Alara noticed. The entrance was hidden behind a waterfall that crashed down with enough force to drown out conversation. Vera led them through, Kaelin following with a hand on Alara's shoulder, water soaking them all within seconds. Inside, the roar faded to a distant rumble, and Alara stopped breathing. The cavern opened up into something massive, cathedral-sized, with passages branching off in every direction. But it wasn't the space that froze her, it was the wolves. Dozens of them, maybe more. White wolves, every single one, ranging from adolescent to ancient. Some in wolf form, some human, all of them stopping mid-motion to stare at the newcomers. No, not the newcomers. At her. She's really here, someone whispered. The vain heir. I didn't think... Quiet. An older woman stepped forward, human-shaped, with silver-white hair and scars covering half her face. Her eyes were the same molten silver as Vera's, as the wolves. As Alara's own, when she'd seen her reflection in still water during the journey, the woman studied Alara for a long moment. Then she dropped to one knee. Your Highness. Every wolf in the cavern followed suit, a wave of submission that felt wrong, too much, too fast. Don't, Alara said. I'm not. I don't even know who you are. My name is Kira. I was your father's general. The woman stood, and pain flickered across her face. I failed him, failed you. When Seraphine struck, we were scattered, broken. Most of us died. The survivors went underground. For 20 years? We had no choice. Seraphine hunted us, killed anyone who showed signs of the bloodline. We couldn't fight her openly. She had the kingdoms, the armies, the resources. Kira's jaw tightened. So we waited, for you. I was drugged in a cabin for 5 years. I couldn't exactly lead a rebellion. But you're here now. Kira gestured to the cavern. And we're ready. Alara looked around at the faces staring at her with desperate hope. Too much hope. The kind that got people killed when reality didn't match expectations. I can barely control my shift, she said bluntly. I don't remember anything before 5 years ago except fragments. I'm not trained, I'm not prepared, and I'm definitely not whoever you think I am. Silence. Then Vera laughed, short and sharp. Good. If you'd walked in here pretending to be some legendary hero, I'd have known you were a fraud. She crossed her arms. You're scared, smart. That'll keep you alive longer than confidence. Vera, Kira warned. What? She's right. She's not ready. None of us are ready for what's coming. Vera looked at Kaylin. Tell them what you told me. Kaylin, who'd been silent since they entered, stepped forward. Seraphine is moving faster than we anticipated. She's consolidating power. The council's completely under her control now. The ones who aren't, she's quietly removing. Removing how? Alara asked. Accidents, illness, disappearances. His expression was grim. She's also been gathering something. People. Resources. I don't know what for, but it's big. An army? Kira suggested. Maybe, or something worse. What's worse than an army? No one answered that. Kira turned back to Alara. We need to move against her soon, before she's completely untouchable. With what? Alara gestured at the cavern. How many fighters do you have? 50? 100? 73 white wolves capable of combat, Kira said, and maybe twice that in sympathizers, humans, other shifters, who'd support a legitimate claim to the throne. Against how many? Seraphine commands 5,000 soldiers, maybe more. The numbers were absurd. Suicide. Then we don't fight her head on, Alara said. We can't. We'd be slaughtered. So what do you suggest? Kira's tone was neutral, but Alara heard the challenge underneath. She didn't have an answer. Not yet. But something was forming in her mind. Incomplete, dangerous, probably stupid. I need to understand what she's actually doing, Alara said finally. What she's building. You said she's gathering resources. For what? If we're going to fight her, we need to know what we're fighting. Intelligence gathering. Vera nodded. I can do that. I've still got contacts inside the estate. Too risky, Kira said. If you're caught, then I'm caught. But sitting here waiting isn't working either. Vera looked at Alara. She's right. We need information. Kaylin spoke up, his voice cutting through the debate. There's another option, the Southern Kingdom. Everyone turned to him. Alara is the legitimate heir to that throne. If we can rally support there, prove her identity. With what proof? Kira interrupted. She has no crown, no seal, nothing to verify her claim. She has the bloodline. Kaylin gestured at Alara. White wolf, royal silver eyes. That's proof enough for anyone who remembers what the vein line looked like. And for everyone who doesn't? Then we make them believe. Alara's head was spinning. Wait, you want me to just walk into my father's kingdom, which I don't remember, which has been fighting over succession for 5 years, and announce I'm the missing heir? Yes. They'll kill me, or lock me up as a fraud. Maybe. Kaylin's expression was maddeningly calm. Or maybe they'll rally behind you. Either way, it forces Seraphine's hand. She can't ignore a direct challenge to her legitimacy. That's insane. It's the only play we have, Alara wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. But looking around the cavern, at the desperate faces, the dwindling resources, The knowledge that they'd been hiding for 20 years with nothing to show for it. Maybe insane was all they had left. "Fine," she said, "but I'm not going alone, and we're doing this smart." Planning took 3 days. 3 days of arguments, strategy sessions, and Alara trying to absorb 20 years of political intrigue while also learning to control a shift she still barely understood. Vera worked with her on the transformation. It wasn't pleasant. "Stop fighting it," Vera snapped for the 100th time as Alara writhed on the cavern floor, halfway between human and wolf, and stuck in agonizing limbo. "You're trying to force it. That's not how it works." "Then tell me how it works," Alara gasped. "It's instinct. You have to let go." "I don't know how to let go." Vera crouched beside her. 5 years of drugs trained you to suppress everything. Now you need to do the opposite. Stop controlling. Stop thinking. Just feel. That's not helpful. Feel the moon. Feel your blood. Feel the thing inside you that knows what it is, even if you don't. Vera's eyes flashed silver. "And for the love of everything, stop being so damn scared of yourself." Alara closed her eyes, tried to do what Vera said, tried to stop controlling, stop thinking, stop. The shift slammed through her like lightning. One moment human, the next wolf, clean, fast, almost easy. She opened her eyes, wolf eyes, and Vera was grinning. "There, see? Not so hard." Shifting back was harder, took twice as long. But eventually, Alara managed it, collapsing naked and exhausted on the stone floor. "Better?" Vera said, tossing her a blanket. "Do it 100 more times and you might survive a real fight." Encouraging. "I don't do encouragement. I do results." Despite everything, Alara found herself almost liking Vera. She was blunt, harsh, and had zero patience for self-pity. But she was also honest in a way most people weren't. "Can I ask you something?" Alara said, wrapping the blanket around herself. "Depends on the question." "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. For all you know, I'm exactly as useless as I feel." Vera was quiet for a moment. Then, "My sister was killed in Seraphine's purge. She was 12. White wolf bloodline, just starting to show signs." Her expression went hard. "Seraphine's soldiers burned our village to the ground to make sure they got everyone. I survived because I was out hunting." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be angry." Vera stood. "And when the time comes, be vicious. That's the only way we win." On the 4th day, they were ready to move. The plan was simple, which usually meant it was terrible, but they were out of better options. Elara, Kaelin, and a small group of white wolves would travel to the Southern Kingdom's capital. They'd approach the council, present Alara's claim, and hope enough of them remembered the old royal line to take her seriously. Meanwhile, Vera would lead a separate team back to the north to gather intelligence on Seraphine's activities. "If this goes sideways," Kira said, pulling Alara aside before they left, "you run. Don't try to fight. Don't try to save anyone. Just run." "That's your advice? Run? You're the bloodline. You're what matters." Kira's scarred face was deadly serious. "The rest of us are expendable. You're not." "I don't accept that." "You don't have to accept it. Just do it." They left at dawn. 15 white wolves in human form, dressed as travelers, with Kaelin as their supposed leader. Alara wore simple clothes and kept her head down, playing the role of a servant. The journey south took a week. The landscape changed gradually, mountains giving way to forests, then to farmland. They passed through villages where people stared but didn't challenge them. Saw soldiers wearing Seraphine's colors patrolling roads. Heard whispers of unrest, of taxes increasing, of people disappearing. "She's squeezing them," Kaelin murmured as they camped one night, "draining resources for something. Still don't know what." "No, but it's accelerating." They reached the Southern Kingdom's capital, a city called Ashenmere, on the 8th day. Alara stopped at the gates, staring up at walls she should have recognized but didn't. The city was massive, sprawling, with towers reaching toward gray skies. It should have felt like home. It felt like a stranger's dream. "You all right?" Kaelin asked quietly. I don't remember any of this. Your body might. Come on! They entered through the main gate, and immediately Alara felt wrong. The city was too quiet, too empty. Streets that should have been filled with merchants and travelers were nearly deserted. The few people they saw moved quickly, eyes down, like they were afraid of being noticed. What happened here? One of the wolves muttered. Seraphine happened, Kaelin said. She doesn't control this kingdom directly, but the instability serves her. Keep moving. They made their way to the council chambers, a grand building near the city center. Guards stood at every entrance, wearing colors Alara didn't recognize. Not Seraphine's, but not her father's either. Kaelin approached the main entrance. We seek an audience with the council. We have information regarding the succession. The guard, young, nervous, looked them over. The council doesn't see petitioners. They'll see us. Kaelin's voice carried weight, authority. Tell them the vain heir has returned. The guard's eyes widened. That's not possible. Tell them anyway. The guard disappeared inside. They waited. Alara's heart was pounding so hard she felt sick. This was it, the moment where everything either worked or fell apart spectacularly. The guard returned. The council will see you, but only 3 of you. The rest wait outside. Kaelin nodded. Alara, Vera, with me. They entered the chambers. Inside was a long room with a raised dais at the far end. 7 people sat behind a curved table, old, tired, dressed in faded finery that had seen better days. Behind them hung a banner with the Vane family crest, a white wolf on a field of silver and blue. Alara stared at it, felt something twist in her chest. Who are you? The man in the center asked. His voice was rough with age. And what claim do you make? Alara stepped forward. Her mouth was dry. My name is Alara Vane, daughter of King Aldrich Vane. I am the rightful heir to this throne. Silence. Then laughter, bitter, disbelieving. The Vane heir is dead, a woman to the left said. She disappeared 20 years ago. Everyone knows this. She was taken, Kaelin said, hidden, kept drugged and imprisoned to prevent her from reclaiming what's hers. Prove it, another council member demanded. Alara didn't hesitate. She shifted. Right there in the council chambers, in front of 7 humans who probably hadn't seen a white wolf in 2 decades, she let the transformation take her. It was faster this time. Cleaner. The wolf surged forward, and she didn't fight it. When the shift completed, she stood on 4 legs, massive and white, silver eyes burning in the dim light of the chamber. The council members stumbled back. One actually fell out of his chair. Alara shifted back, ignoring the fact that she was now naked in front of strangers. Vera quickly threw a cloak over her. The White Wolf bloodline, Alara said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her. Royal. Undeniable. I am Aldrich Vane's daughter, and I've come to take back what Seraphine stole. The old man in the center stared at her. His hands were shaking. I knew your father, he whispered. I saw you when you were a child. You have his eyes. Then you know I'm telling the truth. Even if you are who you claim, the woman started. She is, the old man interrupted. I'd stake my life on it. Then we have a problem, another member said. Because Seraphine controls the north. She has armies, resources, and she's made it very clear what happens to anyone who challenges her claim. So you've just been sitting here for 20 years? Vera's voice was sharp. Letting her consolidate power while you wait for someone else to fix it? We've been surviving, the woman snapped. Which is more than most managed? Enough. The old man stood. His name, Alara remembered suddenly, was Marcus. He'd been her father's advisor. The question is, what do we do now? We rally, Alara said. Every house that remembers the Vane line, every soldier who served my father, we build an army and we take the north back. With what forces? This kingdom barely has enough guards to maintain order. Then we find them. There are white wolves in hiding, sympathizers, people who've been waiting for someone to fight back. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded. I'll send word to the remaining loyal houses, but Alara? His expression turned grim. Seraphine will hear about this within days.
maybe hours. And when she does, she'll come for you with everything she has. Let her come. You don't understand. She's not just a queen. She's something else. Something worse. He leaned forward. Your father discovered it right before he died. That's why she killed him.
He found out what she really is. Alara's blood went cold. What is she? I don't know. He died before he could tell me, but he was terrified. Before Alara could respond, before she could ask more questions, the doors burst open. Guards flooded in, 20 of them, 30, all wearing Seraphine's colors, and at their head was Mira, but not the empty-eyed Mira from the estate. This Mira's eyes were clear, sharp, and filled with something that looked almost like regret. Alara Vane, Mira said formally, by order of Queen Seraphine Draven, you are under arrest for treason, fraud, and conspiracy against the crown. Kalen moved to draw his sword. The wolves tensed. Don't! Mira's hand went up. We have the building surrounded. You fight. Everyone dies, including her. You were my nursemaid, Alara said quietly. You raised me. I was a spy. Mira's voice was flat. I served Seraphine then. I serve her now. The woman you remember never existed. The words hit harder than any blade. So this was a trap, Kalen said, from the moment she walked into the council chambers. Mira smiled, cold, professional. Seraphine knew you'd come here eventually. We've been waiting. Marcus stood. You have no authority in this kingdom. I have 50 soldiers and you have 7 old politicians. I have all the authority I need. Mira looked at Alara. Come quietly. Seraphine wants you alive. But if you force me to take you by force, I can't guarantee you'll stay that way. Alara's mind was racing. They were surrounded, outnumbered. Fighting would get everyone killed. But surrendering meant going back to that cabin, back to the drugs, back to the fog. She'd rather die. Alara, Kalen said quietly. Don't. She ignored him, reached for the shift, and Mira was faster. The dart hit Alara in the neck before she could transform. Not the same drug Greaves had used. This one was faster, harder, pulling her down into darkness immediately. The last thing she saw was Kalen lunging forward, the wolves shifting, chaos erupting. And Mira's face, calm, professional, completely devoid of the woman who'd once tucked Alara into bed and sang her lullabies. Then, nothing. Quote, she woke in a cage. Not a cell. An actual cage, made of silver that burned when she tested the bars, designed specifically to hold a shifter. The room around her was stone, cold, underground judging by the lack of windows, and sitting in a chair just outside the cage was Seraphine. Hello, Alara, the queen said pleasantly. Welcome home. Alara tried to speak. Her tongue was thick, useless. Whatever they'd used on her hadn't worn off yet. Don't strain yourself. The drug will fade in a few hours. Seraphine stood, approached the cage. I have to say, I'm impressed. 5 years locked away, and you still managed to cause this much trouble. Your father would be proud. Rage burned through the fog. Alara lunged at the bars. The silver seared her skin. She fell back, gasping. Careful, Seraphine said. Pure silver, specifically forged to contain white wolves. We learned a lot during the purge. She tilted her head. You want to know why, don't you? Why I killed your father, why I took everything from you. Alara managed to nod. Because he was weak. Seraphine's voice hardened. Both of them were, your father and Kalen's. They believed in mercy, in justice, in ruling with kindness. She laughed. Kindness doesn't build empires. Fear does. Power does. You're insane, Alara rasped. No, I'm practical. Seraphine crouched, eye level with the cage. I'm going to tell you a secret, Alara. Something your father discovered right before I killed him. Something that terrified him so much he almost fled his own kingdom. She leaned closer. I'm not human. Never was. I'm something older. Something that's been waiting centuries for the right moment to take what should have always been mine. Alara's blood turned to ice. What are you? Seraphine smiled, and for just a moment her eyes flashed black. Completely black. No white, no iris, just void. I'm what wolves used to fear before they forgot to be afraid. She stood. And now that you're here, now that the bloodline is back, I can finally finish what I started 20 years ago. Killing me won't. I'm not going to kill you. Seraphine's smile widened. I'm going to use you. Your blood, your power, your very existence. There's a ritual, old magic. It requires royal blood, specifically white wolf royal blood. With it, I can break every boundary, every limitation. I'll become unstoppable. The others will come for me. Let them try. Seraphine walked toward the door. In 3 days, the moon will be full. That's when the ritual happens. Until then, rest. You'll need your strength. She left. The door slammed shut. Locks clicked into place. Elara was alone in the silver cage, drugged, captured, with 3 days until Seraphine sacrificed her for some kind of dark ritual. And somewhere out there, Kaylin and the others had no idea where she was. She'd failed. Completely. Catastrophically. The rebellion was over before it even started. Elara closed her eyes, and for the first time since remembering who she was, she let herself cry. The crying didn't last long. Elara had learned years ago that tears accomplish nothing except making Greaves laugh, so she let herself feel it, the grief, the fear, the overwhelming sense of failure, and then she buried it. Locked it away in whatever part of her brain still functioned despite the drugs. She needed to think. The cage was approximately 8 feet by 8 feet. Silver bars, floor to ceiling, spaced too close together for even her human form to slip through. The lock was on the outside, complex, definitely magical, given the faint shimmer around the mechanism. The stone walls were solid. No windows. One door also locked from the outside. She was alone. Trapped. And according to Seraphine, she had 3 days before becoming a human sacrifice. But she was alive. And where there was life, there was a chance. Elara sat up, ignoring the way her head spun. The drug was fading, but slowly. She tested the bars again, carefully this time, just a fingertip. The silver burned immediately, but the pain was manageable. Silver stopped shifters from transforming. That was the whole point. But what if she didn't need to transform completely? The idea was insane. Probably impossible. But Vera's words echoed in her mind. Stop controlling. Stop thinking. Just feel. Elara closed her eyes. Reached for the wolf inside her, not to shift fully, just to touch that power. To let a fraction of it bleed through. Her fingernails lengthened slightly. Sharpened. Not quite claws, but close. The silver didn't react to partial shifts. Interesting. She spent the next few hours experimenting, pushing the boundaries of what she could do without triggering the cage's defenses. Partial shifts in her hands, her senses, her strength. It was exhausting, and the control required made her head ache, but it worked. By the time footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, she'd figured out how to sharpen her hearing enough to track movement through stone. The door opened. A guard entered, young, nervous, carrying a tray of food. Stay back from the bars, yeah, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Elara didn't move from where she sat in the center of the cage. What's your name? Doesn't matter. It does to me. He hesitated, then set the tray down just outside the bars. Eric, how long have you worked for Seraphine? 2 years. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Do you know what she's planning to do to me? That's not my business. She's going to kill me in some kind of ritual. Use my blood for dark magic. That doesn't bother you? Eric's jaw tightened. I follow orders. Even when the orders are wrong? I don't get paid to have opinions. He turned to leave. Eric. Elara's voice stopped him. My father was a good king. He treated people fairly, protected them. Seraphine murdered him and lied about it. You know that, don't you? I don't know anything about politics. This isn't politics. It's murder, and you're helping her do it again. Eric's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, she thought he might say something. Then he just left, the door slamming behind him. But he'd left the food. Small victories. Time moved strangely in the cell. No windows meant no way to track the sun. Alara slept in fits, woke disoriented, and tried to keep her mind sharp by planning escapes she had no way to execute. Eric came 3 more times. Each time she talked to him, not begging, not pleading, just talking. About her father, about the kingdom before Seraphine, about what it meant to follow orders versus doing what was right. He never responded, but he kept coming back. On what she thought was the second day, the door opened and someone else entered. Mira. Alara's chest tightened with rage. Come to gloat? No. Mira stood just inside the doorway, her expression unreadable. I came to explain. There's nothing to explain. You were a spy. You betrayed me. End of story. It's more complicated than that. Is it? Alara stood, walked to the bars despite the silver's proximity, making her skin crawl. You raised me. You were the closest thing I had to a mother after mine died, and you sold me to that monster. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Mira's composure cracked, just slightly. You don't understand what she is, what she's capable of. I tried to resist, once. She showed me what happens to people who resist. So you just went along with murdering a king? Erasing a child's memory? 5 years of torture? I thought Greaves would keep you sedated but safe. I didn't know. Mira stopped, took a breath. It doesn't matter what I thought. I failed you. I know that. Then help me now. I can't. Can't or won't. Both. Mira's voice was barely a whisper. She'll know. She always knows. And what she'll do to me? She shuddered. I'm not brave enough for that. Alara stared at her, at the woman who'd once been everything to her, now reduced to this broken shell. Then why are you here? Mira pulled something from her pocket, a small vial filled with clear liquid. She set it on the floor and slid it under the bars, just far enough that Alara could reach it without touching silver. It's a suppressant, Mira said. For the ritual? Seraphine needs you conscious but compliant. She'll dose you with this before it starts. And you're telling me this why? Because there's an antidote, a counter-agent that neutralizes it, but you'd need to take it within an hour of the suppressant. Mira's eyes met Alara's. I can't give you the antidote. I can't help you escape. But I can tell you it exists. That's all I can do. Where would I even get it? The ritual chamber. Seraphine keeps all her alchemical supplies there. Mira turned to leave. I'm sorry, Alara. For what it's worth, I wish things were different. Mira. She stopped. You said she showed you what happens to people who resist. What did she show you? Mira's face went white. Herself. What she really is beneath the human mask. She looked back, and her eyes were hollow. I've seen things that broke my mind. I'm not the woman who raised you anymore. That woman died screaming 20 years ago. Then she was gone. Alara picked up the vial, studied it. Why would Mira tell her any of this? Was it a trap, or was there still some small piece of the woman she'd known buried under all that fear? Either way, she now had information, and information was power. Kaylin found her on the 3rd day. She didn't know how, didn't know if it was their connection or pure stubbornness or luck. But she heard him before she saw him, his heartbeat, distinct and familiar, moving through corridors she couldn't see. Then the door exploded inward. Not picked, not unlocked. Exploded. Wood and stone flying everywhere, and Kaylin strode through the wreckage with Vera at his side, both of them covered in blood that definitely wasn't theirs. You're late, Alara said, trying to keep the relief out of her voice. Had to fight through 3 levels of guards. Kaylin moved to the cage, his clouded eyes somehow finding hers exactly. You hurt? Just my pride. Vera was already examining the lock. Silver mechanism, enchanted. I can't break it. Then we take the whole cage. Kaylin gripped the bars, silver burning his palm, smoke rising from his skin, and pulled. The cage didn't budge. Stop, Alara said. You're just hurting yourself. I'm not leaving you here. I'm not asking you to, but brute force isn't working. She held up the vial Mira had given her. Seraphine's planning a ritual, tonight, when the moon's full.
She needs me alive for it. Then we'll kill her before... We can't. Not yet. Alara's mind was racing. She's not human. She's something else. Something old and powerful. If we go after her unprepared, we lose. So what do you suggest? Let the ritual happen. Both Kaylin and Vera stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Hear me out, Alara said quickly. The ritual needs my blood. Royal blood. But what if instead of fighting it, we use it against her? What if we let her start the ritual and then turn it back on her? That's insane, Vera said. You have a better idea? Yes. Break you out and run. And then what? She'll hunt us forever. She'll find us. This is our chance to end her, but we have to be smart about it. Kaylin was quiet for a long moment. What would you need? The antidote to whatever she's going to drug me with. It's in the ritual chamber, and I need you to get the other wolves into position. When the ritual starts, when she's vulnerable, we strike. You're asking me to let her take you to a blood ritual and hope we can rescue you before she kills you. Yes. That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard. Got a better one? Kaylin's jaw worked. Then, fine. But if this goes wrong, it won't. If it does, he continued, I'm tearing this whole kingdom down to get you back. Something warm unfurled in Alara's chest. Deal. Vera was shaking her head. You're both insane. This is going to get everyone killed. Maybe, Alara said. But if we do nothing, we lose anyway. At least this way we're choosing the fight. They left her in the cage. It killed Kaylin to do it. She could see it in the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched. But he went. Took Vera and disappeared back into the corridors, leaving Alara alone with her plan and her fear. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had stopped meaning anything. Finally, the door opened again. Seraphine entered, flanked by guards. She was dressed differently now, dark robes covered in symbols that hurt to look at. Her hair was unbound, and her eyes were already starting to shift, black bleeding into the whites. It's time, she said. The guards unlocked the cage, hauled Alara out roughly, clamped silver manacles on her wrists. The metal burned, but she didn't react. You're very calm, Seraphine observed. I expected more resistance. Would it matter? Not really, but it would have been amusing. Seraphine gestured, and the guards dragged Alara forward. Come, let me show you where your bloodline ends. They walked through corridors Alara didn't recognize. Down, always down, deeper into whatever foundation this fortress was built on. The air got colder, damper, and the stone walls started showing marks, symbols carved deep, old enough that moss had grown in the grooves. Do you know what this place was before it was a fortress? Seraphine asked conversationally. It was a temple, built by the first wolves, back when they still remembered what they were running from. Running from what? From me. From things like me. Seraphine smiled. They thought they could hide, thought they could build kingdoms and forget. But I never forgot. They reached a massive door covered in more symbols. Seraphine pressed her hand to it, and the door swung open silently. The ritual chamber beyond was huge, circular. The floor was carved with an intricate pattern, circles within circles, lines connecting points that formed shapes Alara's eyes couldn't quite follow. Candles burned at specific points, their flames an unnatural blue, and at the center was an altar made of black stone. Magnificent, isn't it? Seraphine gestured to the room. 20 years I've been preparing this, gathering the components, waiting for the right bloodline. She looked at Alara. Your father almost ruined everything when he discovered what I was. But I solved that problem, and now, finally, I can finish what I started centuries ago. What are you? Alara asked. I told you. I'm older than your kind. I'm what hunted the first wolves when they were still learning to shift. I'm the thing they built temples to hide from. Seraphine's eyes went completely black. I'm the reason your bloodline exists at all, because only the strongest survived me. The guards forced Alara onto the altar, chained her down. The stone was cold against her back, and the manacles made her skin smoke. Seraphine picked up a knife. The blade looked ordinary, but Alara could feel the wrongness radiating from it. "This will hurt," Seraphine said. "Quite a lot. But pain is necessary for proper transformation. You understand." She raised the knife, and Alara smiled. "You made a mistake," Alara said. Seraphine paused. "Oh? You assumed I'd fight this, that I'd be terrified and weak." Alara met those black eyes. "But you forgot something. I've been drugged and tortured for 5 years. I've survived things that would break most people."
And more importantly, she reached for the wolf inside her, not fully, just enough to let her eyes flash silver. "I'm not most people." Seraphine's expression shifted, uncertainty flickering across her face. "It doesn't matter," she said. "You're still chained, still helpless. Your little speech changes nothing." She brought the knife down. Alara didn't try to dodge. Instead, she did what Vera had taught her. She stopped controlling, stopped thinking, and let go. The shift hit her like a tidal wave, but not a complete shift. Something in between, something the silver couldn't stop because it wasn't quite wolf, wasn't quite human. Her bones restructured, her muscles strengthened, and the manacles, designed for either human wrists or wolf paws, shattered. Seraphine stumbled back, shock written across her face. Alara rose from the altar, her body caught in that in-between state, and grabbed Seraphine's wrist before the knife could reach her. "Like I said," Alara growled, her voice distorted, "you made a mistake." Then she twisted, hard, and the knife clattered to the floor. Seraphine screamed, not in pain, but in rage. Her human facade cracked completely, and the thing beneath surged forward. Her body elongated, her skin turned gray, and her face became something out of nightmares. Too many teeth, eyes that were wells of nothing. "You stupid child," the thing hissed. "You think breaking free changes anything?" "I've killed hundreds of your kind. What makes you think you're different?" "Because I'm not alone." The doors exploded inward. White wolves poured into the chamber, dozens of them, led by Vera and Kira. Behind them came soldiers, humans wearing the vain crest that Alara had thought was lost forever. And at the front, sword drawn, was Kaelin. "You were right," he said to Alara. Letting her start the ritual was smart, because now everyone can see what she really is. He gestured to the soldiers. Many of them had gone pale, staring at Seraphine's true form with horror. "Your queen," Kaelin said loudly. "This is what you've been serving, a monster, a thing that killed their kings and wore their crown like a costume." Seraphine, or the thing she'd become, snarled, "Kill them! Kill them all!" The guards hesitated. Some moved to obey, but others dropped their weapons. "No," Eric said. He was standing near the back, his face white, but his voice steady. "I won't, not for this." Other guards echoed him, enough that Seraphine's forces were suddenly outnumbered. "Traitors," Seraphine hissed. "I'll tear you all apart." "You'll try," Vera said, and shifted fully. The white wolf lunged. Chaos erupted. Wolves against monster, loyal guards against rebels. The ritual chamber became a battlefield, and Alara was right in the center of it. She fought in her in-between form, using strength she didn't know she had, instincts that came from somewhere ancient. Seraphine was faster, stronger, but Alara had numbers on her side. And she had rage. 20 years of stolen life, 5 years of torture. Her father's murder, Mira's brokenness. All of it fueled her as she drove Seraphine back, toward the altar, toward the ritual circle that was still active. "You can't kill me," Seraphine laughed, even as black blood poured from wounds. "I've survived for centuries. I'll survive this." "Maybe," Alara said. She grabbed Seraphine and threw her onto the altar, into the center of the ritual circle. But let's test that theory. She picked up the knife Seraphine had dropped, the one meant for her blood, and drove it into the monster's chest. The ritual circle flared. Blue flames erupted, and Seraphine screamed, a sound that shattered stone and made ears bleed. "No!" she shrieked. "No! This is wrong! The ritual needs royal blood, not—" "I am royal blood," Alara said coldly, "and you just got sacrificed by it." The flames consumed Seraphine.
Her screams reached a pitch that was barely audible, and then she was just gone. Ash. Nothing. The circle went dark. Silence fell over the chamber. Alara stood over the altar, still in her in-between form, covered in blood and ash, breathing hard. Then Kira dropped to one knee. "The queen is dead," she said. "Long live the queen." One by one, the white wolves followed, then the rebel soldiers. Then, slowly, even some of Seraphine's former guards. Eric was among them. Alara looked at Kaelin. He was smiling, that dangerous, sharp smile, and his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. Not perfect, but better. "Congratulations, he said. "You just started a revolution." Alara shifted back fully to human form. Someone threw a cloak over her. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "No, but you finished it." He held out his hand. "So what now, Your Majesty?" Alara looked around the chamber, at the wolves, at the soldiers, at the people who'd chosen to follow her even though she was broken and unprepared and had no idea what she was doing. "Now," she said, taking Kaelin's hand, "we take back the rest." Taking back the rest turned out to be harder than killing a monster. The immediate aftermath of Seraphine's death was chaos. Guards who'd served her fled or surrendered. The ritual chamber had to be cleared of bodies, some human, some wolf, all casualties of a war that had been brewing for 20 years. And then came the questions. Who was in charge now? What happened to the kingdoms Seraphine had controlled? What about the nobles who'd allied with her, the soldiers who'd followed her orders, the countless people who'd benefited from her rule? Alara stood in the center of it all, still covered in ash and blood, and realized that killing a tyrant was the easy part. Building something better was going to take everything she had. "We need to secure the fortress," Kira said, all business. Seraphine had loyalists. Not all of them were in that chamber. They'll regroup, try to take back control. "How many?" Alara asked. "Unknown, but enough to be a problem." Kira looked around at their forces. Maybe 100 fighters total, half of them wounded. "We're not equipped for a siege." "Then we don't let it come to that." Kaelin stepped forward. "We need to move fast, claim the throne before anyone else can. Show strength." "I can't just walk into the throne room and declare myself queen," Alara said. "Half the kingdom doesn't even know who I am." "Then we make them know." Vera, back in human form and sporting a nasty cut across her shoulder, grinned fiercely. "We've got proof of what Seraphine was. We've got the vain heir. We've got white wolves that everyone thought were extinct. That's one hell of a story. Stories don't hold kingdoms together. No, but they start revolutions." Vera's expression turned serious. "And like it or not, you just started one. Now you either finish it or watch someone else take what you bled for." Alara wanted to argue, wanted to point out that she'd barely survived the last few hours, that she had no idea how to rule, that she was terrified of failing everyone who'd put their faith in her. But Vera was right. She'd come too far to stop now. "Fine," Alara said. "We take the throne, but we do it smart. Kira, gather everyone who fought with us. I want them visible, armed, ready. Vera, find the nobles who were at that council meeting in Ashenmere. If they're still alive, bring them here. We need legitimate witnesses." "And me?" Kaelin asked. Alara looked at him, this blind king who'd somehow found her in the dark, who'd helped her remember who she was, whose curse had cracked the moment she'd transformed. "You're with me," she said, "because we're doing this together." His smile was small but real. Together. I like that. The throne room was in the North Fortress, Seraphine's seat of power. Getting there meant walking through corridors lined with guards, who didn't know whether to bow or draw swords. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Alara walked with her head up, flanked by Kaelin on one side and Kira on the other, with 50 white wolves at her back. She was still wearing borrowed clothes, still had blood under her fingernails, still looked more like a survivor than a queen. Maybe that was the point. The throne room doors were massive, carved wood reinforced with iron, designed to intimidate. 2 guards stood at attention, their faces carefully blank. "Open the doors," Kaelin said. "The queen is..."
one guard started. Dead, Kaelin finished. Open the doors, or we'll do it ourselves. The guards looked at each other, then at the 50 wolves behind them. Then they opened the doors. Inside, the throne room was packed. Nobles in their finery, merchants, guild leaders, council members from both kingdoms. And at the center, sitting on Seraphine's throne like he belonged there, was Lord Garrett. Well, he said, his voice dripping false pleasantness. If it isn't the mysterious vagrant, come to crash another party? Alara walked forward slowly. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. That's not Seraphine's throne, she said quietly. It's mine. Garrett laughed. Yours? You think killing a queen makes you one? I think being the rightful heir makes me one. Killing the usurper who stole it just means I'm taking back what was already mine. You have no proof of your bloodline, no witnesses, just the word of some northern barbarian and a pack of animals. Careful, Vera growled from behind Alara. This animal has teeth. We have proof, Kira said, stepping forward. She held up a medallion, ancient, marked with the Vane crest. This belonged to King Aldrich. He gave it to me the night he died, told me to find his daughter, to keep it safe until she could claim her birthright. She handed it to Alara. The medallion was warm in her palm, heavy, real. And we have witnesses, a voice called from the back of the room. Marcus pushed through the crowd, flanked by the other council members from Ashenmere. His face was bruised. Someone had clearly tried to stop him from coming, but his voice was strong. I served King Aldrich Vane for 30 years, Marcus said. I watched this girl grow up. I saw her transform into a white wolf, the royal bloodline that's been extinct for 2 decades. She is who she says she is. They're lying, Garrett said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Paid off, coerced, it doesn't matter. The kingdoms won't follow some girl who appeared out of nowhere. The kingdoms will follow whoever's strong enough to lead them. Kaelin's voice cut through the room like a blade. And right now, the only person in this room who's proven their strength is her. He gestured at Alara. She survived 5 years of imprisonment that would have broken anyone else. She escaped. She fought her way back to a throne that was stolen from her. She faced a monster that terrified kingdoms for centuries, and she killed it. Kaelin's clouded eyes somehow found Garrett. What have you done exactly? Besides sit on a throne that doesn't belong to you? Silence. Then someone started clapping. Eric, the guard who'd brought her food, who'd dropped his weapon rather than serve a monster. Others joined him, slowly at first, then faster. Guards, servants, even some of the nobles. Not all of them, but enough. Garrett's face went red. This is treason. I'll have you all. You'll have nothing. Alara walked up the dais steps. Get out of my throne. You can't. I can. I am. And if you don't move, I'll make you move. For a moment, she thought he might fight, thought this would turn bloody. Then Garrett stood, slowly, his hands shaking with either rage or fear. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, Alara said. It is. He left, pushed through the crowd, his supporters following. The ones who stayed, and there were more than Alara expected, looked at her with a mix of hope and uncertainty. She sat down on the throne. It felt wrong, too big, too heavy, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. But she sat anyway. People of the North and South Kingdoms, she said, her voice carrying across the room. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not a trained politician. I'm not experienced in courtly matters. But I am the daughter of King Aldrich Vane. I am the rightful heir to the southern throne, and I just killed the monster who murdered my father and ruled you through fear and lies. She stood because sitting felt too passive. Seraphine is dead. Her reign is over. What comes next is up to all of us. We can go back to fighting over scraps, tearing ourselves apart while pretending we're in control. Or we can build something better, something that doesn't require blood sacrifices and hidden monsters. She looked at Kaelin, at Kira, at Vera and Marcus, and all the people who'd fought beside her. I'm choosing better. Anyone who wants to join me, stay. Anyone who doesn't, she gestured to the door. Leave. I won't force loyalty, but I won't tolerate treachery either. More people left. Maybe a third of the room. The ones who stayed knelt. Long live Queen Ilara, Marcus said. The room echoed it. Not everyone, not with full conviction, but it was a start. Ilara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. All right, she said. Now the real work begins. Moms. The real work turned out to be endless meetings. Ilara spent the next week learning how to run two kingdoms that had been at each other's throats for 5 years. Trade agreements, border disputes, tax reforms, military reorganization, criminal justice, agricultural policy. Her head was spinning by day 3. I have no idea what I'm doing, she admitted to Kaylin one night. They were in what used to be Seraphine's private study. Ilara had claimed it because it was quiet and had good light. None of us do, Kaylin said. He was sitting across from her, reading reports with his fingertips. Apparently, that was how he'd been governing blind. We're all just making it up as we go. That's not reassuring. Wasn't meant to be. He set down the report he'd been reading. But you're doing better than you think. The councils are listening. The people are responding. You stopped 3 potential rebellions just by being visible and honest. I also accidentally started a trade war with the eastern provinces, which Marcus is fixing. That's why you have advisors. Ilara rubbed her eyes. She was exhausted. Hadn't slept more than a few hours at a time since taking the throne. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Seraphine's face, heard her father's scream, felt Greaves's needle going in. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up back in that cabin, she said quietly. That this is all some drug-induced hallucination, and I'll open my eyes to find Greaves standing over me. Kaylin stood, crossed to where she sat, and took her hand. You're awake, he said. You're here. And you're doing what your father would have wanted, building something worth protecting. How do you know what he would have wanted? You never met him. No. But I know you. And if he raised you, even for just 17 years, he must have been someone worth remembering. Ilara's throat tightened. I barely remember him. Just fragments. His laugh. The way he smelled like leather and pine. The time he taught me to ride and I fell off and he laughed until he cried. Then make new memories. Better ones. Kaylin squeezed her hand. You're not just your father's daughter. You're yourself, and that's enough. Before Ilara could respond, someone knocked on the door. Come in, she called. Mira entered. Ilara tensed immediately. She hadn't seen Mira since the ritual chamber, hadn't known if the woman had fled, or stayed, or what. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mira said quietly, but there's something you need to see. Sick. What Ilara needed to see was a woman chained in the dungeons. Not just any woman. Someone who looked disturbingly like Seraphine, same dark hair, same elegant features, but younger. Terrified. Who is this? Ilara asked. Her name is Lysa, Mira said. She's Seraphine's daughter. The world tilted. Her what? Daughter, or as close as that thing could have to offspring. Mira looked at the girl, barely 20, if that. She's been locked down here for weeks, maybe longer. We found her when we were clearing out Seraphine's personal chambers. Lysa looked up, and her eyes were human. Completely, utterly human. No black void, no monster underneath. Please, she whispered. I didn't know what she was. I didn't know what she did. I just... Her voice broke. I just wanted my mother to love me. Ilara's chest ached. She'd seen this before. In Mira's eyes. In the guards who'd been too afraid to disobey. In everyone Seraphine had broken. Release her, Ilara said. Your Majesty, one of the guards started. I said release her. Ilara knelt in front of Lysa as the chains came off. What did she do to you? She kept me locked up whenever she needed to maintain her human form, said I was her anchor, her connection to this world. Lysa rubbed her wrists. I tried to escape once. She showed me her true face. I never tried again. You're not responsible for what she did. Everyone thinks I am. Everyone who knows she had a daughter assumes I'm a monster too. Then we'll prove them wrong, Ilara stood. Starting now, you're free. Not a prisoner, not a tool, just a person trying to figure out who you are without someone else defining it for you. Lisa stared at her. Why would you help me? I'm her daughter. Because I know what it's like to have your identity stolen, to be turned into someone's weapon. Alara held out her hand. And because we both deserve better than that. Lisa took her hand. 2 weeks after taking the throne, Alara stood in the Southern Kingdom's capital, her true home, though she barely remembered it. The council had agreed to recognize her claim, partially because of the evidence, partially because the alternative was more civil war, and partially because Kaelin had made it very clear that the North would support her, and fighting both kingdoms wasn't an option anyone wanted. The coronation was held in a cathedral that Alara vaguely remembered from childhood. Massive stained glass windows, marble floors, and a crown that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds when Marcus placed it on her head. "Do you swear to rule with justice and mercy?" he asked, using the traditional words. "I swear to rule with honesty and strength," Alara said. She'd refused to use the old oath. It felt like lying. "I swear to protect my people from threats both external and internal, and I swear to never become the monster I destroyed." It wasn't traditional, but it was true. The crowd erupted in cheers. Afterward, there was a feast, music, dancing, all the things royalty apparently did to celebrate. Alara escaped to a balcony halfway through. Kaelin found her there because, of course, he did. "Not enjoying your own party?" he asked. "Too many people, too much noise." She leaned against the railing. "I keep expecting someone to tell me this is all a mistake, that I don't actually belong here. You do belong here. You're literally the rightful heir. I'm a girl who spent 5 years in a cage. I'm not—" She stopped, took a breath. "I'm not the legendary queen they're expecting." "Good." Kaelin stood beside her. "Legends are boring. They're perfect and untouchable and completely useless for actual governance. You're supposed to be reassuring me. I'm being honest, which is better." He turned to face her, and his eyes, clearer now, the curse almost completely broken, met hers. "You're not a legend, Alara. You're a survivor. You're stubborn and angry, and sometimes you make decisions that terrify everyone around you. But you're also brave and compassionate and willing to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. You're just saying that because the curse breaking is tied to me. I'm saying it because it's true. The curse breaking is just a bonus." Alara laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange after everything, but also right. "So what now?" she asked. "We've got 2 kingdoms to unify. Nobles who hate each other, trade systems that need rebuilding, and probably a dozen more crises waiting to happen." "Now," Kaelin said, "we do what we've been doing. We face it together. We make mistakes. We fix them. We survive. That's it? That's your grand plan? Do you have a better one?" She didn't. But standing there with him, looking out over a kingdom that was broken but healing, surrounded by people who'd chosen to follow her despite every reason not to, maybe that was enough. "Together," she said, echoing his words from weeks ago. "I like that." Kaelin smiled, took her hand, and for the first time since she'd woken up in that cabin with no memory and no hope, Alara felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 6 months later, Alara stood in the same spot where she'd first shifted. The courtyard had been rebuilt, cleaned, the blood was long gone, but the memory remained. Vera stood beside her, arms crossed. "You sure about this?" "No," Alara admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." In front of them were 50 young wolves, teenagers mostly, children of white wolves who'd been in hiding, kids who'd grown up being told they had to suppress who they were, that transformation was dangerous, that being seen meant death. Not anymore. "All right," Alara said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "I know you're scared. I was terrified the first time I shifted. Actually, I'm still terrified most of the time." That got a few nervous laughs. "But fear doesn't define us. What we choose to do despite the fear, that's what matters." She walked down the line, meeting eyes. "You are white wolves, royal bloodline. You're not monsters. You're not weapons. You're people with an incredible gift, and I'm going to teach you how to control it. Oops. She stepped back, took a breath, and shifted. The transformation was smooth now, easy. She'd practiced enough that it felt like putting on a familiar coat instead of tearing herself apart. The white wolf looked at the teenagers, then shifted back. Your turn, she said, and don't worry about getting it perfect. I've been doing this for months and I still screw it up sometimes. Slowly, hesitantly, they began to shift. Some managed it right away. Others struggled. A few panicked, and Vera had to talk them down. But by the end of the session, all 50 had successfully transformed at least once. Not bad for a first day, Vera said as the kids dispersed, chattering excitedly among themselves. Better than my first day, Alara agreed. That's not saying much. You nearly took my arm off. You told me to stop controlling, and you listened, eventually. De Vera's expression turned serious. You're good at this. Teaching them. Showing them they don't have to be afraid of themselves. Someone should have done it for me. For all of us. Alara watched the young wolves heading back to their families. Maybe if we'd had this 20 years ago, Seraphine wouldn't have been able to kill so many of us. Maybe. Or maybe we needed someone who'd survived her worst to show us we could do better. Vera clapped her on the shoulder. Either way, you're doing it now. That's what counts. That night, Alara found Kalen in the library they'd claimed as their unofficial meeting place. He was reading, actually reading now, with eyes that functioned mostly normally. The curse had broken completely the day Alara was crowned, like whatever dark magic Seraphine had used couldn't survive her death and the return of the legitimate bloodline. How'd the lesson go? He asked without looking up. Good. Chaotic. But good. Alara sat across from him. Kalen, can I ask you something?
Oh, it's Nias. What are we? He did look up at that. What do you mean? I mean, she gestured vaguely between them. Everyone keeps calling you my mate. Vera does it. Kira does it. Even some of the nobles. But we've never actually talked about it. Do we need to? I think so, yes. Kalen set down his book. All right. The truth is, I felt the bond the moment I found you in that ravine. Something connected us. Something deeper than politics or curses or any logical explanation. It scared me. Still does, honestly. Because you can't control it? Because I've spent 5 years controlling everything. Having to. And then you appeared and suddenly I couldn't control this. Couldn't rationalize it. Couldn't plan for it. He smiled slightly. It was terrifying. And the best thing that ever happened to me. Alara's chest felt tight. I feel it too. That connection. I thought it was just because breaking the curse involved me, or because we went through all this together. But it's more than that. Yeah, it is. So what do we do about it? Kalen stood, crossed to where she sat, and knelt in front of her chair. We do what we want, what feels right, not what tradition says, not what the nobles expect, just what we choose. And what do you choose? I choose you, he said simply. However you'll have me. Partner, ally, mate. I don't care about the title. I care about you. Alara reached out, touched his face. His eyes were clear, seeing her, really seeing her. I choose you too, she said. All of it. Together. He kissed her then, gentle at first, then deeper, like they were sealing a promise that went beyond words. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Kalen smiled. Together, he said. I really do like that word. A year after killing Seraphine, Alara stood on the same balcony where she'd been crowned. The kingdoms were united now, officially. The North and South merged under a single crown, with councils from both regions sharing governance. It wasn't perfect. There were still disputes, still nobles who hated the arrangement, still people who mourned Seraphine's rule because it had benefited them. But it was better. Trade flourished. White wolves came out of hiding. The purge was declared a crime against the crown, and reparations were made to families who'd lost loved ones. Lissa had become Alara's chief advisor,
The girl knew Seraphine's networks better than anyone, and she was ruthlessly efficient at dismantling what remained of the monster's influence. Mira had finally broken. The walls she'd built around herself had cracked, and underneath was the woman who'd raised Alara. Not completely healed, probably never would be, but present, trying. Eric had been promoted to captain of the Queen's Guard. He took the job seriously, probably to make up for the years he'd served a monster. And Kaelin stood beside her now, his hand in hers, looking out over a city that was finally at peace. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Taking the throne, all the responsibility that came with it." "Every single day," Alara said honestly. "And I'd do it again in a heartbeat." "Why?" "Because I know what happens when the wrong person has power. I lived it, survived it." She looked at him. "And because I'd rather be terrified and trying than safe and silent. That's very noble of you. It's very stubborn of me. There's a difference." He laughed. "Same thing, really." The moon was rising, full and bright. Alara felt the pull, the invitation to shift. She didn't fight it anymore. Just let it be part of who she was. "Come on," she said, tugging Kaelin toward the stairs. "Let's run." "Now?" "Right now, before someone finds us with another crisis." They ran through the castle, through the gates, into the forest beyond, and when they were far enough from the city, they shifted. Two wolves, one white, one dark gray, racing through the trees under a full moon, no longer broken, no longer cursed, just free. And for Alara Vane, the girl who'd been stolen, drugged, and erased, the woman who'd fought her way back from nothing to reclaim everything, that freedom was worth more than any crown.